The ship descended through Earth's atmosphere without making a sound. It was the middle of the night in São Paulo when the first child disappeared. Maria Santos was sleeping in her bedroom when the blue light surrounded her bed. Her mother found the room empty in the morning. The sheets were still warm. The window was closed from the inside. There was no sign of how she had vanished. That same night, children disappeared from Tokyo, London, Cairo, Sydney, Mumbai, and dozens of other cities. 200 children in total, all between the ages of 6 and 14, all taken while they slept. The pattern was clear to anyone looking at the global map, but no one was looking yet. Each family thought their tragedy was unique. Each police department thought they had a local case. It took 3 days before someone connected the dots. The ship belonged to the Crusade hegemony. It was a research vessel, small by their standards, but still larger than anything humanity had ever built. The Crusade had been watching Earth for decades. They cataloged it as World 8472 Theta, a developing planet with a young species showing promise, but still centuries away from joining galactic society. The hegemony was not cruel by their own standards. They followed the galactic conventions strictly. Article 7 stated clearly that developing species should not be contacted until they achieved faster-than-light travel on their own. The Crusade respected this law. They did not land on Earth. They did not announce themselves. They simply took what they needed. The biological adaptation program required samples from species at various development stages. The younger the species, the more valuable the genetic data. Human children represented an opportunity that came once in a civilization's lifetime. Their DNA was unmodified by genetic engineering. Their neural pathways were still forming. They were perfect specimens for study. Dr. Velthar supervised the collection personally. She was a scientist of high standing in the hegemony, with 3 centuries of experience in xenobiology. As she watched the sleeping children being loaded into stasis pods, she felt satisfied with a job well done. The extractions had been clean. No witnesses. No evidence. The humans would never know what happened. She was wrong about that. 3 months passed. On Earth, the disappearances became a global crisis. Parents formed support groups. Governments launched investigations. Conspiracy theories spread across the internet like wildfire. Some people claimed it was human trafficking. Others said it was a secret government program. A few people whispered about aliens, but they were dismissed as crazy. Then a Crusade scout ship malfunctioned during a routine patrol near Earth's solar system. The pilot tried to reach the nearest station but failed. The ship crashed in the Australian outback in a remote area where no one lived. The pilot died on impact. The ship's systems began shutting down one by one. It took 2 days for satellite imagery to detect the crash site. Australian military reached it first. They established a perimeter and called in scientists. What they found changed everything. The ship was clearly not human-made. Its hull was composed of materials that did not exist in any database. Its power source emitted radiation signatures never seen before. But the most important discovery was in the ship's computer core. Despite the damage, parts of the database were intact. Dr. Sarah Chen led the team that cracked the alien language. It took weeks of work, feeding the symbols into artificial intelligence systems looking for patterns, comparing frequencies. The breakthrough came when they realized the database contained star charts. Once they matched those to known stellar formations, the rest fell into place like dominoes. The files revealed everything. The hegemony's observations of Earth, their classification system for developing species, their research programs, and most importantly, a cargo manifest from 3 months earlier listing 200 human juveniles transported to Station Kethnar in the Triangulum sector. The children were alive. They had been taken by aliens, and humanity now knew where they were being held. The news hit the public like a nuclear bomb. Within hours, every major news network was broadcasting the story. Within days, the streets of every major city filled with protesters demanding action. Governments that had spent centuries fighting each other suddenly found common ground. The United Nations held an emergency session that lasted 72 hours straight. A new council formed with representatives from every nation. They called it the United Earth Emergency Council. Its mission was simple and absolute: bring the children home. The cost did not matter. The risk did not matter. Every resource on the planet would be directed toward this single goal. General Marcus Webb stood before the council to present the military assessment. He was a career soldier with gray hair and hard eyes. He had seen combat on 3 continents. He had led troops through impossible situations, but nothing had prepared him for what he was about to propose. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady, "we are going to war with an alien empire. An empire that has existed for thousands of years. An empire that controls 400 star systems. An empire that has technology we barely understand. But we have one advantage they do not expect. We are angry. And angry humans are the most dangerous force in the universe." The room fell silent. Someone in the back asked the obvious question. "How can we fight them? We do not even have faster-than-light travel." General Webb smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "We did not have it yesterday, but we have a crashed alien ship with an intact FTL drive. Our engineers have been studying it for 6 weeks. They tell me they can replicate it. Not perfectly, not efficiently, but well enough to get us where we need to go." Dr. James Morrison stepped forward. He was the chief engineer on the project, a man who had spent 40 years designing spacecraft for NASA. "We do not understand how it works," he admitted. "Not really. But we do not need to understand it. We just need it to work. We are reverse engineering it through brute force, testing every component, mapping every connection. We have already achieved a successful test jump to Proxima Centauri and back. It took 3 days. The theoretical model said it should take decades. The council members looked at each other. The implications were staggering. Humanity was about to take its first steps into the galaxy. But they were not steps of exploration or peace. They were steps of war. "How long until we can mount a rescue mission?" the Secretary General asked. 6 months to build the fleet," Webb replied. "We are converting everything we can. The International Space Station will become a warship. Our military satellites will be weaponized. We are building new ships from scratch in orbit. 50 vessels total. They will not be pretty, but they will be armed. Nuclear missiles. Kinetic weapons. Every destructive technology we have ever developed. We are building a fleet designed for one purpose, to hit hard and hit fast." "What about defenses?" someone asked. "If they have energy weapons, shields, all that science fiction technology." "We do not have shields," Webb admitted. "We do not have energy weapons. We have armor plating and explosive firepower. If they shoot at us, some of us will die, but we will shoot back. And our weapons were designed to destroy planets. I think they will work just fine against spaceships." The vote was unanimous. Operation Homecoming was approved with full authorization. Every nation committed its resources. Money flowed into the project like water. Factories retooled overnight. Scientists worked around the clock. The military began recruiting volunteers for the mission. 20,000 people volunteered in the first week. They came from every nation, every background. Soldiers and pilots, obviously, but also engineers, doctors, and regular civilians who wanted to help. Many were parents who had lost children. Others simply believed in the cause. They all understood the risks. They all accepted them. Captain Jennifer Torres was one of the first to volunteer. She had been an Air Force pilot for 15 years. Her daughter, Elena, was one of the missing children. Jennifer had spent 3 months searching for answers. Now she had them. She was going to get her daughter back, or she was going to die trying. There was no third option in her mind. The fleet took shape in orbit above Earth. The ships were ugly things, cobbled together from whatever materials were available. They did not look like the sleek vessels in movies. They looked like flying warehouses with weapons bolted to every surface. But they were functional, and they were ready to fight. 6 months after the crash in Australia, the Reckoning Armada was ready to launch. 50 ships, 20,000 crew members, enough firepower to level a continent. General Webb stood on the bridge of the flagship, a converted space station called Retribution. He looked at the faces of his crew. They were scared. They were determined. They were human. Before departure, Webb sent a message to the Crusade hegemony. It was broadcast on every frequency they could generate from the alien technology. The message was simple and direct. To the Crusade hegemony, you have taken our children. We want them back. You have 30 days to return them safely to Earth. If you do not comply, we are coming for them. This is not a negotiation. This is a promise. Return our children or face the consequences. The message was received at Hegemony Central Command 3 days later. The Council of Elders reviewed it with confusion. A primitive species making threats? It was almost amusing. They had watched thousands of civilizations develop. None had ever responded to sample collection with military action. The humans would calm down eventually. They always did. The elders decided to send a single destroyer to Earth's solar system, a show of force to discourage any foolish action. The destroyer was a standard patrol vessel, lightly armed by hegemony standards but still more than capable of handling any threat from a pre-FTL species. It departed with a crew of 200. Its estimated travel time was 15 days. The destroyer never reported back. It never even sent a distress signal. One moment it was en route to Earth's solar system. The next moment it simply vanished from all tracking systems. What the hegemony did not know was that the Reckoning Armada had already departed Earth. The humans had not waited for a response. They had not waited for permission. They had simply left, pushing their crude FTL drives to maximum capability. And when their long-range sensors detected the hegemony destroyer, they had attacked without warning, without mercy, and without hesitation. The destroyer was obliterated by a salvo of nuclear-tipped missiles fired from beyond visual range. The crew never even saw what killed them. They barely had time to realize they were under attack before their ship became expanding debris. General Webb watched the explosion on his displays. His face showed no satisfaction, no regret, only determination. "One down," he said quietly. "Continue on course to Station Kethnar. Maximum speed. No more delays." The Reckoning Armada accelerated into the darkness between stars. Behind them, Earth continued its normal rotation, unaware that humanity had just fired the opening shots in a war that would shake the galaxy. Ahead of them, the Crethak hegemony continued its daily business, unaware that something terrible was coming their way. And in Station Kethnar, 200 human children slept in their cells dreaming of home, not knowing that their entire species was coming to save them. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson it would never forget. When you take a human's child, you do not just make an enemy. You make a force of nature, and nothing in the universe is more dangerous than a human parent with nothing left to lose. The Reckoning Armada traveled through space like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. The ships moved in tight formation, their crude FTL drives creating ripples in spacetime that any advanced sensor could detect from light years away. They were not trying to be stealthy. They did not care who knew they were coming. On the bridge of Retribution, General Webb studied the star charts they had taken from the crashed alien ship. The route to Station Kethnar would take them through the outer territories of the hegemony. That meant they would encounter other ships. Other stations. Other targets. Sir, we are approaching the Threshnall system, Lieutenant Commander Park reported from the sensor station. Intelligence indicates it is a minor border outpost. Approximately 500 personnel. Used mainly for monitoring hyperspace traffic. Webb nodded slowly. Do they know we are coming? Impossible to say, sir. But they must have detected our FTL signatures by now. We are not exactly subtle. Good, I want them to see us. I want them to warn their superiors. I want the whole galaxy to know what happens when you take our children. Webb turned to the weapons officer. Charge all missile batteries. Prepare kinetic weapons. When we drop out of FTL, I want maximum firepower ready to deploy. Sir, should we not try to communicate first? Park asked carefully. They might surrender. Webb's eyes were cold. They had their chance to communicate. They had 30 days to return our children. They chose not to. Now we communicate in the only language they will understand. The Reckoning Armada dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Threshnall system. The outpost station hung in orbit around a small moon, its metallic surface gleaming in the light of the distant star. It looked peaceful, routine. The station's crew were going about their normal duties, monitoring long-range sensors, processing traffic reports, drinking whatever passed for coffee in Crethak culture. Then the alarm started screaming. 50 unidentified ships had just appeared in their system. The sensor technician stared at his display in confusion. The ships were primitive in design. Their power signatures were crude and inefficient, but there were so many of them. And they were all armed. Station Commander Thelrak received the report with disbelief. A primitive species? Here, how is that possible? They should not even have FTL capability. He activated the communication system. Unidentified vessels, this is Threshnall Station. You are entering Crethak hegemony space without authorization. State your purpose immediately or you will be fired upon. The response came in broken Crethak, clearly computer translated. Threshnall Station, this is the human ship Retribution. You are harboring our children in your empire. You will release them immediately. You have 5 minutes to begin evacuation of your station. Thelrak laughed.
He could not help it. Humans?
You mean the juveniles from World 8472 Theta? They are research subjects. They are not here. They are at a primary facility. And even if they were here, what makes you think you can demand anything? You are in violation of 17 galactic conventions. Leave now or face consequences. You have 4 minutes. Thelrak's amusement faded. These primitives were serious. Activate defensive systems. Charge all weapons. If they do not leave, we will teach them a lesson about respecting their betters. The station's defense grid came online. Energy weapons powered up. Shield generators hummed to life. Threshnell Station was not a military facility, but it still had adequate defenses for dealing with pirates or other minor threats. Against 50 primitive ships, it should be more than sufficient. Time is up, Webb said quietly. Fire everything. The human fleet opened fire from maximum range. Missiles streaked across the void. They were not sophisticated weapons. They did not have fancy guidance systems or exotic warheads. They were simply large explosives attached to engines, moving at incredible speeds. Some carried nuclear payloads. Others were just kinetic kill vehicles relying on pure velocity and mass. The Crusade had never seen weapons like this. Their own missiles were elegant things guided by sophisticated AI, powered by antimatter. They moved at faster than light speeds in micro-jumps. They were designed for precision strikes against shielded targets. The human missiles were not elegant. They were brutal. Hundreds of them, each moving at half the speed of light. The station's defensive systems tried to intercept them, but the sheer volume overwhelmed the targeting computers. Energy beams lanced out, destroying dozens of missiles, but hundreds more kept coming. The first impacts shook the station. The shields held against the initial strikes, absorbing the kinetic energy, but they were designed to withstand precise weapons fire, not sustained bombardment. The shield generators began overheating. Warning lights flashed across the command center. Then the nuclear weapons arrived. The explosions lit up the void like small stars. The electromagnetic pulses scrambled every electronic system within range. The shields collapsed, and the remaining kinetic weapons struck the unprotected hull. Threshnell Station came apart. The hull ruptured in a dozen places. Atmosphere vented into space. Internal explosions rippled through the corridors. Commander Thelrak had just enough time to realize he had made a terrible mistake before the command center lost pressure, and everything went dark. The entire battle lasted 47 seconds. From the moment the humans opened fire until the moment the station became debris, less than a minute passed. 500 Crusade personnel died without understanding what had killed them. On Retribution's bridge, the crew watched in silence. Some looked satisfied. Others looked sick. None looked happy. Webb simply made a note in his log. Threshnell Station destroyed. No survivors detected. Continuing to primary target. Captain Torres sat in her fighter bay, watching the debris field on a monitor. She thought about the 500 people who had just died. She thought about her daughter, taken from her bed in the middle of the night. She did not feel good about what had happened, but she did not feel guilty either. They had made their choice. Humanity was making its choice too. News of the attack reached Crusade Central Command within hours. The report was initially dismissed as faulty data. An entire station destroyed by primitives? Impossible. But when the sensor recordings were reviewed, the truth became undeniable. The humans had not only attacked, they had attacked with a level of ferocity that shocked the hegemony's military analysts. Grand Admiral Kethros convened an emergency meeting of the High Command. The holographic projections of the senior military officers appeared around the circular table. Kethros was old even by Crusade standards, with nearly 500 years of military service. He had fought in 3 major wars and countless smaller conflicts, but he had never seen anything like the tactical data from Threshnell. They did not even try to disable the station, Fleet Commander Tharan noted. They simply fired every weapon they had and kept firing until nothing remained. This is not how civilized species conduct warfare. They are not a civilized species, another officer responded. They are barely out of their planetary gravity well. They probably do not even understand the conventions. Kethros studied the data carefully. Actually, I think they understand perfectly. Look at their approach vector. They came in from the system's edge, maximizing their range advantage. They fired from a distance where our energy weapons could not respond effectively. They used overwhelming force to ensure complete destruction. This was not random violence, this was calculated destruction. What do they want? Someone asked. They want their juveniles back, Kethros replied. They made that clear in their initial message. They gave us a deadline. We ignored it. Now they are taking action. For 200 research subjects? They are willing to go to war over 200 juveniles? The disbelief in the officer's voice was clear. Kethros looked at the tactical display showing the human fleet's projected course. They were heading directly for Station Kathnar, where the human children were being held. They were not deviating. They were not stopping. They were coming like a force of nature. Apparently, yes, which means we have severely underestimated their species. What are your orders, Grand Admiral? Tharin asked. Deploy Battle Groups 7, 12, and 20 to intercept them. 3 groups should be sufficient. 900 ships against their 50. Even with their primitive tactics, they cannot possibly overcome those odds. Should we prepare a diplomatic response as well? Offer to return the subjects in exchange for peace? Kethros considered this. Part of him wanted to say yes. But another part, the part that had survived 5 centuries of military service, knew better. No. If we negotiate now, it will be seen as weakness. Every minor species in the galaxy will think they can challenge the hegemony with violence. We need to make an example of the humans, crush their fleet, then we can discuss terms. The orders went out. 3 battle groups began moving toward the intercept point. 900 ships, each one technologically superior to anything humanity had ever built. Crews that trained for decades. Weapons that could shatter planets. Shields that could withstand direct hits from antimatter warheads. The Krothak High Command watched the fleet movements with confidence. This would be over quickly. The humans would see the overwhelming force arrayed against them and surrender. Or they would fight and be destroyed. Either way, this unfortunate incident would be resolved, and the galaxy would remember why the Krothak hegemony had maintained peace for thousands of years. Through strength, through superiority, through the absolute certainty that challenging them was futile. What they did not understand was that humans do not think about war the way other species do. When a Krothak goes to war, they calculate acceptable losses. They consider economic impacts. They think about how the conflict will affect their standing in galactic politics. War is a tool, carefully controlled and precisely applied. When a human goes to war for their children, they do not calculate anything except victory. They do not care about losses. They do not care about economics. They do not care about politics. They care about bringing their children home. Everything else is secondary. The Reckoning Armada detected the Krothak fleet 2 days later. Long-range sensors showed the formation, the ship counts, the power signatures. The tactical computer calculated the odds and displayed them on the main screen. 900 versus 50. The computer recommended immediate retreat. General Webb looked at the display for a long moment. Then he turned to his crew. All ships, maintain course and speed. Prepare for combat operations. This is what we came here to do. Sir, the odds are overwhelming, Park said quietly. We could try to negotiate. Use their fleet's presence as leverage to demand the children's return. They had their chance to negotiate, Webb replied. They chose to send a fleet instead. So we will give them what they want. A battle. And they will learn something today. They will learn that when you threaten a human's child, odds do not matter. Numbers do not matter. The only thing that matters is the will to fight. And humans have more of that than any species in this galaxy will ever understand. He activated the fleet-wide communication channel. 20,000 people listened as he spoke. This is General Webb. We are about to face 900 enemy ships. I will not lie to you. Many of us will die today. Maybe all of us. But before we die, we are going to hit them so hard that the galaxy will never forget. We are going to show them what happens when someone touches our children. We are going to make them regret every decision that led to this moment. And even if we fall, we will fall moving forward, always forward, until our children are free or until there is no one left to fight. Those are the only 2 options. There is no surrender. There is no retreat. There is only victory or death. Across the fleet, people checked their weapons. They secured their stations. They said quiet prayers or looked at pictures of the children they were fighting for. Fear was present. But it was overshadowed by something stronger. Purpose. Determination. The absolute certainty that what they were doing was right. Captain Torres climbed into her fighter. She had Elena's picture taped to the control panel. She touched it gently, then powered up her weapon systems. "Hang on, baby," she whispered. "Mama's coming." The two fleets accelerated toward each other, the Crusade in perfect formation, confident and professional. The humans scattered and aggressive, like a pack of wolves hunting prey too large to kill easily. Both sides believed they would win. Only one was right. The battle was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to learn a lesson that would echo through the stars for generations to come. Never underestimate a species fighting for its children. Because a parent's love is the most powerful force in the universe, and when that love is transformed into rage, nothing can stand against it. The Battle of the Void began at 0347 hours Galactic Standard Time. The Crusade fleet had arranged itself in a traditional defensive formation, with heavy cruisers forming the outer wall and support vessels clustered in the center. It was a formation designed to maximize shield coverage and energy weapon firing lanes. It was the same formation they had used successfully for 3,000 years. The human fleet did not arrange itself in any particular formation. The ship simply accelerated forward in a loose swarm, each captain choosing their own approach vector. From the Crusade perspective, it looked like chaos. From the human perspective, it was freedom. Each ship could react independently. Each captain could adapt to changing conditions. It was not elegant, but it was effective. Fleet Commander Tharan watched the humans approach with growing concern. Their tactics made no sense. They should be grouping together for maximum shield efficiency. They should be presenting a unified front. Instead, they were scattered across thousands of kilometers, making themselves harder to defend and easier to isolate. "They are making this too easy," his tactical officer noted. "We can pick them off one at a time." Tharan was not so sure. Something about the human approach bothered him. They had destroyed Threshnall Station easily. They were not stupid, so why were they making such obvious mistakes now? The answer came when the humans reached weapons range. Every ship opened fire at once, not at the Crusade fleet, but at the space between them. Hundreds of missiles streaked into the empty void ahead of the Crusade formation. Tharan frowned. What were they shooting at? There was nothing there. Then the missiles detonated. Nuclear explosions lit up the void. The electromagnetic pulses washed over the Crusade sensors like a tidal wave. Screens went white. Targeting systems scrambled. Communication channels filled with static. For 30 seconds, the Crusade fleet was effectively blind. That was when the real attack began. Through the electromagnetic storm came a second wave of missiles. These ones were aimed properly. Hundreds of them, moving at velocities that the Crusade tracking systems had never been designed to handle. The missiles were simple, primitive, just explosives and thrust. But they were fast. Faster than anything the Crusade could intercept with their precision weapons. The outer wall of heavy cruisers took the brunt of the assault. Shields flared and held against the initial impacts. But the humans had learned from Threshnall. They were not trying for precision strikes. They were going for overwhelming volume. For every missile the defensive systems destroyed, 3 more got through. The first Crusade ship to fall was the heavy cruiser, Inevitable Victory. A nuclear warhead overwhelmed its shields, and the follow-up kinetic weapons tore through the hull like paper. The ship broke apart in a cascade of secondary explosions. 3,000 crew members died in seconds. Tharan stared at his displays in horror. One ship down already? That was not possible. The humans were primitives. They should not be able to penetrate modern shields. They should not be able to coordinate an attack through an electromagnetic storm. They should not be winning. "Return fire. All batteries," he ordered. "Target their largest ships." The Crusade energy weapons lanced out across the void, beautiful beams of concentrated power, accurate to within centimeters at ranges of thousands of kilometers. They struck the human ship's dead center. The beams should have sliced through the primitive hulls like lasers through fog. Instead, they hit armor, thick, crude, heavy armor plating made from whatever materials the humans could manufacture in their orbital factories. The armor was not sophisticated. It did not distribute energy or redirect force. It simply absorbed damage through sheer mass. The energy beams burned through outer layers, but the ships kept coming. One human ship took a direct hit to its command section. The entire front quarter of the vessel vaporized. Any civilized species would have retreated for repairs. The human ship simply rotated to present its intact side and kept firing. Its crew compartments were exposed to vacuum. Half the ship was gone. But the weapons still worked, so it continued fighting. They are not even trying to preserve their ships, the tactical officer shouted. They are using them as weapons platforms until they are destroyed. Theron understood then. The humans were not fighting to win by traditional standards. They were fighting to kill as many Krithik as possible before they died. Every missile fired reduced the hegemony's forces. Every ship that stayed in combat even while dying meant more damage to the fleet. The humans were not trying to survive this battle. They were trying to make their deaths count. This is madness, Theron whispered. They are all going to die. Yes, sir. But they are taking us with them. The battle became a nightmare. The Krithak ships were superior in every measurable way. Better weapons, better shields, better sensors. But the humans did not fight measurably. They fought with a desperation that broke all conventional tactical models. Ships with no business being in combat continued to function. Crews with fatal injuries stayed at their posts. Captains, who should have retreated instead, rammed their dying vessels into Krithak ships at full thrust. Captain Torres flew her fighter through the chaos. Her squadron had started with 12 ships. Now there were 4. She watched another pilot take a direct hit from a Krithak beam weapon. The fighter simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris, just gone. Torres felt the loss like a physical blow, but she kept flying, kept shooting, kept moving toward the enemy. Her target was a Krithak command vessel. She could see it on her display, surrounded by smaller ships like a queen bee in a hive. If she could just get close enough to fire her remaining missiles, maybe she could do some real damage. Maybe she could make Elena proud. A Krithak interceptor moved to block her path. Torres did not try to evade. She armed her self-destruct and accelerated directly toward it. The interceptor realized what she was doing and tried to retreat, but it was too late. Torres rammed her fighter into the Krithak ship at full speed. Both vessels exploded in a brilliant flash. Torres did not feel the impact. Her last thought was of her daughter's smile. Then there was nothing. On Retribution, General Webb watched the tactical display as red markers disappeared one by one. Each marker represented a human ship. Each disappearance represented hundreds of deaths. He felt each loss, but he could not let himself dwell on them. Not yet, not while there was still fighting to do. Status report, he ordered. We have lost 30 ships, sir. 20 remaining. But the enemy has lost over 600. Their formation is breaking apart. They are trying to retreat. Webb felt something like satisfaction. Not happiness, not joy. Just grim acknowledgement that the sacrifice was working. Do not let them retreat. Press the attack. I want every remaining missile fired. Every weapon deployed. If we are going down, we are taking all of them with us. Theron watched his fleet disintegrate around him. 900 ships had entered this battle. Fewer than 300 remained functional. The humans had lost most of their forces, but they had achieved something impossible. They had broken the Krithak hegemony's fleet through sheer, unthinking aggression. All ships retreat to Rally Point Gamma, he ordered. We need to regroup and request reinforcements. But the retreat was messy. Ships fled in different directions. Some tried to cover others and were destroyed for their efforts. The humans pursued relentlessly, firing their last missiles, using their last weapons. Even ships with no ammunition left tried to ram Krithak vessels. It was carnage on a scale the galaxy had not seen in millennia. When the battle finally ended, less than 200 Krithak ships escaped. The humans had 17 ships remaining. Retribution was one of them, though barely. Half its hull was melted. Life support was failing in most sections. The crew was down to a third of their original numbers. But they were still moving, still heading toward Station Kethnar. Webb looked at the damage reports with clinical detachment. They had won, in the sense that they had survived and the path was now clear. But the cost had been devastating. Over 15,000 humans dead, families destroyed, lives ended. And for what? For the chance to continue forward, for the possibility of rescuing 200 children. Was it worth it? Webb did not know. He hoped the children would think so, when they were old enough to understand what had been done for them. Meanwhile, on Station Kethnar, Dr. Velthar received news of the battle with growing horror. The humans were still coming. After losing 30 ships, after losing thousands of their own people, they were still coming. They had not retreated. They had not negotiated. They had simply fought until they won and then continued their advance. She looked at the holding cells where the human children slept, unaware of the war being fought for them. 200 small lives that had somehow triggered the largest military disaster in hegemony history. She had thought of them as research subjects, valuable data points. She had not thought of them as people with families who cared about them enough to burn down the galaxy. For the first time in her 3 centuries of life, Dr. Velthar felt genuine guilt. What had they done? What had she done? These were not specimens. These were someone's children, and their parents were coming for them with fire and fury. An emergency message arrived from Central Command. It was brief and direct. If the humans reached the station, she was authorized to eliminate the subjects to prevent their recovery. The reasoning was sound from a strategic perspective. Without the children, the humans would have no reason to continue fighting. The conflict could be resolved diplomatically. Velthar stared at the message for a long time. She could do it. The children were in stasis. They would not feel anything. It would be quick and clean. One command and the problem would be solved. But she could not give that command. Despite everything, despite her years of scientific detachment, she could not kill children. She deleted the message and sent her own response. She would not comply. If Central Command wanted the children dead, they would have to send someone else to do it. The Reckoning Armada continued its advance. The remaining ships were damaged beyond any reasonable combat capability, but they kept moving. The crews worked around the clock, patching holes, rerouting systems, keeping the vessels functional through sheer determination and improvisation. News of the battle spread through the galaxy like wildfire. The Crusade hegemony tried to suppress the information, but it leaked anyway. A primitive species had destroyed 2/3 of 3 battle groups. The hegemony's reputation for invincibility was shattered. Other species began to wonder, if the humans could do this, what did it mean for the galactic order? Some species felt hope. If the humans could challenge the hegemony, maybe they could too. Others felt fear. If the humans were this violent over 200 children, what would they do if truly threatened? And a few species felt respect. The humans had proven something important. They valued their young enough to die for them. In a galaxy where most species calculated everything in terms of profit and loss, that kind of devotion was rare. Grand Admiral Kethros watched the casualty reports with disbelief. Over 700 ships lost, tens of thousands dead, entire battle groups destroyed. By primitives, by a species that barely had interstellar capability. How was this possible? He reviewed the tactical data from the battle. The humans had not won through superior technology. They had won through tactics that no civilized species would ever use. They sacrificed their own ships as weapons. They continued fighting even when fatally damaged. They showed no concern for their own survival. They fought with the desperation of cornered animals, but with the intelligence of a developed species. It was a terrifying combination. Should we negotiate? One of his advisors asked. Offer to return the subjects in exchange for peace? Kethros wanted to say yes. Every tactical instinct told him to cut losses and find a diplomatic solution. But he had been a military leader for too long. He understood what conceding now would mean. It would mean admitting that violence worked. It would mean showing weakness. It would mean opening the door for every minor species to think they could challenge the hegemony with sufficient aggression. No, he said finally, we fight. We show the galaxy that challenging the hegemony leads only to destruction. Mobilize 10 more battle groups. Send them to Station Kethnar. If the humans want their children, they will have to go through the full might of our military. The orders went out. 10 battle groups. 3,000 ships. The largest military deployment the hegemony had made in a century. It would take time for them to assemble, but once they did, no force in the galaxy could stand against them. Certainly not 17 damaged human ships. But time was something the humans did not intend to give them. Webb received intelligence about the massive fleet being assembled. He did the calculations. The hegemony ships would arrive at Station Kethnar in 5 days. Retribution and her surviving vessels would arrive in 3. So we have 48 hours to rescue the children and leave before we are completely overwhelmed. Lieutenant Park summarized. That should be enough, Webb said quietly. If it is not, then we die trying. Either way, the children go home. The remaining crew members prepared for what they all knew would be their final mission. They checked weapons. They wrote final messages to loved ones back on Earth. They looked at pictures of the children they were trying to save, trying to remember why they were here, why this mattered enough to die for. And somewhere ahead in the darkness, Station Kethnar waited. Inside it, 200 human children slept in their cells, unaware that the entire galaxy was about to learn what happens when you threaten humanity's young. Unaware that their parents had sent an armada to save them. Unaware that thousands had already died just to bring them home. The galaxy was screaming, and the fire had only just begun. Station Kethnar appeared on the long-range sensors like a small moon. It was massive by human standards, a structure that had taken the Crusade decades to build. It housed 4,000 personnel, contained laboratories studying hundreds of alien species, and represented one of the hegemony's premier research facilities. Dr. Velthar had worked there for 70 years. It had been her home, her life's work, her pride. Now it felt like a prison. She stood in the observation deck, watching the distant stars, knowing that somewhere out there the human fleet was approaching. She had received 3 more messages from Central Command. All of them ordered her to eliminate the human children. All of them she had ignored. Station Commander Drakthos entered the observation deck. He was younger than Velthar, only 2 centuries old, but he carried himself with military precision. Doctor, I need to know your intentions. Command has been very clear about their orders. I will not kill children, Velthar replied simply. I am a scientist, not an executioner. Then I will do it, Drakthos said. It is a strategic necessity. If the humans recover their young, they will have won. We cannot allow that. They have already won, Velthar said quietly. They destroyed 3 battle groups to get here. They lost thousands of their own people, and they are still coming. What does that tell you? It tells me they are insane. No, it tells you they care about their children more than they care about their own lives. And that makes them more dangerous than any military force we have ever faced. She turned to face him. If you kill those children, do you think the humans will just leave? They will destroy the station and everyone on it. And then they will continue destroying everything they can reach until they run out of ammunition or ships. Is that what you want? 4,000 deaths to prove a point. Drakthos hesitated. He had been prepared to follow orders, but Velthar's words made him pause. What do you suggest? Give them the children. Let them leave. Save lives on both sides. Command will see that as treason. Command is not here. We are. And we are the ones who will die if we make the wrong choice. She paused. I have spent 3 centuries studying alien species. I have never seen anything like the humans. They should not have survived as a species. Their world is too hostile. Their biology is too fragile. But they did survive. And they did it through cooperation and love for their young. That is their strength, and we underestimated it. Before Drakthos could respond, the alarms began screaming. The human fleet had arrived. 17 ships dropped out of FTL at the edge of the station's defensive perimeter. They looked like they had been through hell. Hulls were scorched and melted. Entire sections were missing. Some ships were venting atmosphere from visible breaches, but their weapons were still functional, and they were still moving forward. The station's defensive grid activated automatically. Energy weapons charged. Point defense systems came online. The station had enough firepower to hold off a significant attack, at least until reinforcements arrived. But looking at the human ships, Drakthos wondered if firepower would be enough. These ships should not even be flying. Yet here they were, ready to fight. A communication request came through. Drakthos accepted it. The face that appeared on the screen was human, male with gray hair and tired eyes. He looked like he had aged a decade in the past few days. Station Kethnar, this is General Marcus Webb of the United Earth Emergency Council. We have come for our children. You have 2 options. 1, you can evacuate your personnel and let us dock peacefully. 2, you can resist and we will take the station by force. Choose quickly. We do not have much time. Drakthos looked at the tactical display. 17 damaged ships against a fully armed station. The humans were bluffing. They had to be. General Webb, you are in no position to make demands. Your fleet is barely functional. Surrender now and we may show mercy. Webb's expression did not change. We did not come here to surrender. We came here to get our children. You have 5 minutes to begin evacuation. After that, we will consider any remaining personnel as hostile and act accordingly. You cannot win this fight, Drakthos insisted. Our reinforcements will arrive in 5 days. You will be trapped here. Then we have 5 days to rescue our children and leave. That should be plenty of time. Webb leaned forward slightly. Listen carefully. We are not here to negotiate. We are not here to play games. We are here for our children and nothing else. You can either help us or die trying to stop us. Those are the only 2 options. Choose now. The channel closed. Drakthos stared at the blank screen, his mind racing. Dr. Velthar spoke quietly.
He means it.
They all mean it. I can disable the station's weapon systems. Give the children to them. Save everyone. If I do that, my career is over. I will be tried for treason. If you do not do that, you will be dead. Which do you prefer? Drakthos looked at his crew. Young Kurthak, who had joined the station to advance their careers, to learn, to contribute to the hegemony's knowledge. They did not deserve to die because some admiral made a bad decision months ago. He thought about the human children sleeping in their cells, unaware of the chaos they had caused. And he thought about the 17 broken ships hanging in space, crewed by people who had already sacrificed everything. He made his choice. Dr. Velthar, disable the weapon systems. Security teams begin evacuation procedures. All non-essential personnel to the escape pods immediately. Velthar moved quickly to the control panel. Her hands shook as she entered the override codes. She had never expected to betray her own people. But she had also never expected to be in a situation where doing the right thing meant disobeying orders. The weapon systems went offline one by one. She opened a communication channel to the human fleet. General Webb, this is Dr. Velthar. I am the lead researcher responsible for the human children. I am disabling our defenses and providing you with the docking coordinates. The children are located in Research Wing 7, Level 3. They are in stasis but unharmed. Please do not fire on the station. Many innocent people are here. There was a pause. Then Webb's voice came through, softer than before. Thank you, Doctor. We will not attack if you are cooperating. Send us the exact location of the children and begin evacuation. You have 45 minutes. The data was transmitted immediately. The human fleet began docking procedures. Their ships moved carefully, as if afraid of falling apart. Docking clamps engaged. Airlocks connected, and then the humans began boarding. The first through were Marines, heavily armed and armored, moving with military precision. They secured the corridors, established defensive positions, and then waved the medical teams forward. Human doctors and nurses rushed into the station, carrying equipment, setting up emergency medical stations. General Webb came aboard with the third wave. He walked through the corridors with several guards following the map that Dr. Velthar had provided. Kurthak personnel watched him pass with a mixture of fear and curiosity. This was the human who had destroyed 3 battle groups. He looked tired, human, not like the monster they had imagined. Webb reached Research Wing 7 and entered the holding area. The sight stopped him in his tracks. 200 cells, each containing a sleeping child. They looked so small, so fragile. Some were curled up as if seeking comfort. Others sprawled out as children do. They were all breathing, all alive. Get them out, he said quietly. Get them all out now. The medical teams moved in, carefully removing children from stasis, checking their vital signs, wrapping them in thermal blankets. Some children began waking up, confused and frightened. The nurses spoke to them softly, telling them they were safe, telling them they were going home. One child, a girl of about 10, opened her eyes and saw Webb standing nearby. Are you real? She asked. Or am I still dreaming? Webb knelt down beside her. His eyes were wet. I am real. We are all real, and we are taking you home. Where is my mom? She is on Earth waiting for you. She never stopped looking for you. None of the parents did. That is why we came here. That is why we crossed the galaxy. To bring you home. The girl started crying. Webb picked her up and carried her toward the evacuation point, where other children were being prepared for transport. Around him, his crew worked with focused intensity. They had fought for this moment. Thousands had died for this moment. And now it was finally happening. Dr. Velthar watched the evacuation from a safe distance. She had expected to feel angry or resentful. Instead, she felt relieved. The children were going home. That was the right outcome, regardless of what happened to her. Webb found her in one of the corridors. She had stayed behind while most of the station evacuated. He approached her carefully. "You are Dr. Velthar?" "Yes, I am the one who took your children. I am responsible for everything that happened." Webb studied her for a moment. "You also saved them. You disabled the weapons. You gave us the location. You could have followed orders and killed them, but you did not." "I could not do it. They are children. No matter what species, children deserve protection. What will happen to you?" "I will be tried for treason. Probably executed. But that is acceptable. I chose my actions knowing the consequences." Webb made a decision. "Come with us. Stand trial on Earth if you want, but do not stay here. Your own people will kill you for helping us." Velthar looked surprised. "You would offer me sanctuary? After everything? You saved our children when you did not have to. That means something to us. Come with us. Help us understand your people. Help us prevent this from happening again." She considered this. Going with the humans meant betraying her people completely. Staying meant death. But more than that, going with the humans meant having a chance to fix things. To ensure this never happened again, I accept. The evacuation took 30 minutes. 200 children, now awake and confused but safe, were loaded onto the human ships. Dr. Velthar went with them, carrying what data she could about the other species being held on the station. It felt like the right thing to do. Before leaving, Webb left a message for Commander Drakthos. "Thank you for making the right choice. You saved lives today, both human and Krithak. I hope your people recognize that." The human fleet undocked and began preparing for departure. The ships were still barely functional, but now they carried precious cargo. The engineers worked frantically to prepare the FTL drives for one last jump. They needed to leave before the hegemony reinforcements arrived. In the medical bay of Retribution, the children were being examined and treated. Most were physically healthy, though malnourished and traumatized. The medical staff worked to comfort them, explaining what had happened, setting up video calls with their families back on Earth. One child asked why so many people looked hurt. A nurse explained gently that there had been fighting. That many people had been hurt trying to rescue them. The child started crying, feeling guilty. The nurse hugged her. "Do not feel bad. You did not ask for any of this, but you need to understand something. You are loved, so much that thousands of people were willing to risk everything to bring you home. That is how much you matter." Webb stood on the bridge watching the final preparations. Lieutenant Park approached him. "Sir, FTL drives are charged. We can leave whenever you are ready. But there is a problem." "What problem?" "Long-range sensors are detecting the hegemony reinforcement fleet. They are arriving early. They will be here in less than an hour." Webb felt his stomach drop. 1 hour. Not enough time to make safe jump calculations. Not enough time to properly prepare. But they had no choice. "Begin jump sequence immediately. We leave now or we do not leave at all." "Sir, jumping without proper calculations could be dangerous. We could end up anywhere. We could damage the drives beyond repair. I am aware of the risks, but staying here means certain death. At least jumping gives us a chance." He activated fleet-wide communications. "All ships prepare for emergency FTL jump. Coordinates are set for Earth. Jump on my mark." The 17 ships powered their FTL drives to maximum. The space around them began to distort. Just as the first hegemony ships dropped out of FTL, the human fleet vanished in a flash of twisted space-time. The hegemony fleet arrived to find Station Kethnar intact but empty, its weapons disabled, and no sign of the human fleet. Grand Admiral Ketharos received the report with a mixture of rage and disbelief. The humans had rescued their children and escaped. They had won, but the humans had paid a terrible price. Of the 50 ships that left Earth, only 17 returned. Of the 20,000 crew members, fewer than 5,000 survived. The fleet limped back to Earth's solar system a week later, damaged beyond recognition but carrying their most precious cargo. As the ships approached Earth, every communications channel lit up with messages. News crews broadcast the return live. Families gathered at viewing centers to watch the ships come home. And when the landing craft touched down with the children aboard, the entire planet seemed to exhale at once. The reunions were emotional beyond description. Parents seeing their children for the first time in months. Tears and embraces, joy mixed with grief for those who died making the rescue possible. The world watched and wept together. General Webb stood apart from the celebrations, watching quietly. He had succeeded. The children were home, but he could not celebrate. Not when so many had paid the ultimate price. Not when he knew that 15,000 families would never have their loved ones return. Someone approached him. It was the girl he had carried from the station. She was with her mother now, but she had wanted to speak to him. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for coming for us." Webb knelt down to her level. "You do not need to thank me. We would cross the galaxy 1,000 times to bring you home. That is what we do. That is what humans do." The child hugged him, then returned to her mother. Webb stood and watched them walk away, watched all the families reuniting, and felt something close to peace. They had paid a terrible price, but they had achieved their goal. The children were home, and the galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. The trial of Dr. Velthar took place 3 months after the fleet returned to Earth. The courtroom was packed with journalists, diplomats, and family members of the rescued children. Velthar stood in the defendant's box, her alien features impossible to read by human standards, but her posture suggesting resignation rather than defiance. The prosecutor presented the case methodically. She was responsible for the abduction of 200 human children. She had subjected them to medical testing without consent. She had kept them imprisoned for months. Under human law, these were serious crimes that could result in life imprisonment. But then the defense presented their case. Velthar had ultimately refused orders to kill the children. She had disabled Station Kethnar's weapons. She had provided the location of the children and facilitated their rescue. She had saved thousands of lives, both human and Crithak, by choosing cooperation over conflict. She had committed crimes, yes, but she had also shown conscience and redemption. The children testified too. They spoke about their captivity, about being scared and confused, but they also spoke about how Dr. Velthar had treated them with basic kindness. She had made sure they were fed properly. She had provided them with educational materials to keep their minds active. She had never harmed them deliberately. She was not a monster. She was a scientist who had made terrible choices but had ultimately done the right thing. When given a chance to speak, Velthar addressed the court directly. Her words were translated from Crithak by a computer system, but the emotion came through clearly. "I cannot undo what I did. I cannot give back the months these children lost with their families. I can only tell you that I have learned something from this experience. I learned that children are not specimens to be studied. They are lives to be protected. And I learned that humanity values its young in a way that my species has forgotten. You risked everything to bring them home. You crossed the galaxy and fought a war. That taught me more about your species than any amount of research could have." The judge deliberated for 2 days. The verdict was guilty on all charges. But the sentence was surprising. Dr. Velthar would serve 5 years of supervised community service, working with human scientists to establish diplomatic protocols with alien species. She would help humanity understand the galactic community and help the galaxy understand humanity. It was not punishment in the traditional sense. It was an opportunity for reconciliation. Velthar accepted the sentence with something that might have been gratitude. She had expected execution or lifetime imprisonment. Instead, she was being given a chance to make things right. It was more than she deserved, but she would take it. Meanwhile, the Crithak hegemony faced its own reckoning. Grand Admiral Kethros had been removed from command. The High Council was in chaos. The military had suffered its worst defeat in millennia. And other species in the galaxy were watching carefully, wondering if the hegemony's power was truly as absolute as it had seemed. Some species saw opportunity. If the humans could challenge the hegemony, perhaps they could negotiate better trade terms or territorial rights. Others saw danger. If the humans were this aggressive over 200 children, what would they do if truly threatened? The balance of galactic power had shifted, and no one was quite sure what the new order would look like. The hegemony sent a diplomatic delegation to Earth 6 months after the children's return. The lead diplomat, Ambassador Thelchris, arrived with an entourage and a message. The hegemony wished to negotiate a formal peace treaty. They offered reparations for the abducted children. They offered technology exchanges. They offered a seat on the Galactic Council. All they asked in return was that humanity agree to follow the established conventions and cease hostilities. The United Earth Emergency Council, now transformed into the Unified Earth Government, received the delegation with caution. General Webb, now promoted to Joint Chief of Defense, attended the meetings along with diplomats and political leaders. The atmosphere was tense. Everyone remembered what had happened. Everyone knew how close they had come to total war. Ambassador Thelkris spoke first. "We come in peace and with respect. The Crusade hegemony acknowledges that mistakes were made. The abduction of your young was a violation of your sovereignty and your rights as a species. We offer our sincere apologies and wish to make amends." The Earth delegates listened politely. Then the Secretary General spoke. "We appreciate the apology, but words are not enough. You took our children. You made us fight a war to get them back. 15,000 humans died. Thousands more were injured. We need more than apologies. We need guarantees that this will never happen again. What guarantees do you require?" Thelkris asked. General Webb leaned forward. "First, Earth's sovereignty is absolute. No alien species will enter our solar system without explicit permission. Second, humanity will have full representation in any galactic institutions. We will not be treated as a junior species or a developing civilization. We are equals. Third, the galactic conventions will be amended to explicitly prohibit the abduction or harm of children from any species, regardless of their development level. And fourth, any species that violates these terms will face immediate military response from Earth. We will not negotiate. We will not wait for diplomatic solutions. We will act." The terms were harsh. The Crusade delegation looked uncomfortable, but they also understood that they had no choice. Humanity had proven it could fight. More importantly, it had proven it would fight if provoked. No one wanted another war like the one they had just witnessed. After 3 days of negotiations, a treaty was signed. The Treaty of Earth, as it came to be known, established humanity as a sovereign power with full rights in galactic affairs. The hegemony paid substantial reparations, including advanced technology and raw materials. More importantly, the galactic conventions were amended to include the human provision, which explicitly protected children of all species from exploitation. Earth began constructing a permanent defense fleet. Using both human engineering and technology shared by the hegemony as part of the treaty, new ships were designed and built. These ships were more sophisticated than the crude vessels of the Reckoning Armada, but they maintained the same philosophy: overwhelming firepower and the willingness to use it. Orbital defense platforms ringed the Earth and extended to the outer planets. Space stations became fortresses. The solar system transformed into a military stronghold. Other species watched this militarization with concern, but no one challenged it. Earth had earned the right to defend itself however it saw fit. Dr. Velthar worked closely with human scientists during her community service. She taught them about galactic politics, alien biology, and the complex social structures that governed interstellar civilization. In return, she learned about human culture, history, and values. She was constantly surprised by humanity's contradictions. They could be violent and gentle, selfish and selfless, rational and emotional. They were the most complex species she had ever studied. One day, while working in the research facility, she received a visitor. It was one of the children she had held captive, now a teenager named Maria Santos. Maria had requested to meet with Velthar as part of her own healing process. The meeting was supervised, but Velthar agreed immediately. They sat across from each other in a small conference room. Maria spoke first. "I wanted to see you again, to understand why you did what you did." Velthar chose her words carefully. "I did it because I saw you and the other children as research subjects rather than as people. I was wrong. I let scientific curiosity override moral judgment. I am sorry for what I did to you. Do you understand now? Why everyone fought so hard to bring us home? Yes, because you are children. Because you are loved. Because humanity will sacrifice anything to protect its young. I understand that now." Maria nodded. "I used to have nightmares about what happened. But I also think about all the people who died to save us. They did not even know us, but they came anyway. That means something. It means I have to make my life count for something too." "What will you do?" Velthar asked. "I am going to study xenobiology. I am going to work in the diplomatic corps. I am going to make sure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else, human or alien. Maybe I can be like you, but do it the right way." Velthar felt something she had not expected. Hope. This child, who had every right to hate her, was instead choosing to build something positive from the tragedy. I think you will do great things, she said quietly. As the years passed, humanity's presence in the galaxy grew. Human ships began exploring neighboring systems. Human traders established commercial relationships with other species. Human scientists collaborated on research projects. But everyone remembered the Reckoning Armada. Everyone remembered what happened when someone threatened Earth's children. Earth became known by many names in galactic society. The Vengeful Cradle, the warrior species, the protectors, but the name that stuck most was simply the Parents, because that was what humans had proven themselves to be, a species that would cross any distance, pay any price, and fight any battle to protect their young. Other species began adopting some human customs. Family units became more valued. Children received better protection under galactic law. The human provision in the conventions was expanded multiple times to cover more situations. Humanity's violent reaction to the abductions had actually made the galaxy a safer place for all children, regardless of species. On Earth, memorials were built for the 15,000 who died during the rescue mission. The largest memorial stood in Geneva, a massive wall inscribed with every name. At the center was a simple message. They crossed the stars so the children could come home. Parents would bring their children to the memorial, explaining the sacrifice that had been made. The children would leave flowers or notes, thanking people they had never met for their courage. General Webb retired from military service 5 years after the mission. He had aged considerably during that time, the stress of command and the weight of lost lives taking their toll. He lived quietly, refusing interviews and public appearances. But occasionally he would visit the schools where rescued children were students. He would sit in the back of classrooms and just watch them learn, laugh, and grow. It made the sacrifice seem worthwhile. One of those children, a boy named Chen Wei, grew up to become a diplomat. At age 25, he was assigned to Earth's embassy on a Crusade colony world. He met with hegemony officials regularly, working to strengthen the peace between their species. During one meeting, an older Crusade admiral asked him a question. "Do you think your species will ever forgive us for what we did?" Chen thought carefully before answering. "I think forgiveness is complicated. We will never forget what happened. We will never stop mourning those who died. But we can choose to build something better. We can choose to make sure it never happens again. That is not the same as forgiveness, but it is something." "Your species is remarkable," the admiral said. "You fight with unmatched ferocity, but you also show mercy and wisdom. We underestimated you greatly. I hope you never make that mistake again," Chen replied with a slight smile. As decades passed, the children who had been rescued grew into adults. They became scientists, diplomats, soldiers, teachers, artists, and parents. They carried the memory of what had been done for them. And when they had children of their own, they understood even more deeply why so many had been willing to die. Because that is what parents do. They protect. They sacrifice. They love without limit. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Earth was not a planet to be dismissed or exploited. Humans were not a species to be underestimated. They had proven that they could be fierce warriors when necessary, but they preferred to be builders, explorers, and protectors. They wanted peace, but they would fight for what mattered, and nothing mattered more than their children. Dr. Velthar completed her community service after 5 years, but she chose to stay on Earth. She had grown fond of humanity, despite everything. Or perhaps because of everything, she continued her work as a bridge between species, using her knowledge to help humans understand the complex politics of galactic civilization. She never returned to the hegemony. Earth had become her home. On the 50th anniversary of the rescue mission, a ceremony was held at the memorial in Geneva. The remaining survivors of the Reckoning Armada gathered, now elderly men and women. The rescued children, now middle-aged adults, stood beside them. Some brought their own children and grandchildren. It was a celebration of life and a remembrance of sacrifice. Maria Santos, now Dr. Santos and the head of Earth's diplomatic corps, gave a speech. She stood at the memorial wall, her hand resting on a name she knew well. Captain Jennifer Torres, her mother's friend who had died in the battle. 50 years ago, the galaxy learned something important about humanity. We will go to any lengths to protect our children. We will cross any distance. We will pay any price. We will fight any enemy, not because we are violent, not because we seek glory, but because we love our children more than we fear death. She paused, looking at the assembled crowd. The people whose names are on this wall did not die in vain. They died so that we could live, so that we could grow up, so that we could have families of our own. And now it is our responsibility to make sure their sacrifice meant something. We must build a galaxy where no child of any species is ever taken from their family again. That is how we honor them. That is how we say thank you. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then as one, they began applauding. The sound echoed off the memorial wall, a sound of gratitude and remembrance and hope for the future. That night, as Earth rotated beneath the stars, parents across the planet tucked their children into bed. They kissed their foreheads. They whispered goodnight. They turned off the lights and closed the doors. And they knew with absolute certainty that if anything ever threatened their children, the entire species would rise up to defend them. Because that is what humans do. The galaxy had screamed beneath their fire once. It would not need to scream again. The lesson had been learned. The precedent had been set. Earth's children were protected not just by laws and treaties, but by the absolute knowledge that humanity would burn down the stars themselves before allowing harm to come to their young. And in the darkness between worlds, other species looked toward Earth and remembered. They remembered the Reckoning Armada. They remembered the Battle of the Void. They remembered the price the hegemony had paid for its mistake. And they made sure to never ever threaten a human child again. Because the galaxy had learned the hardest lesson of all. A parent's love is the most powerful force in the universe. And when that love is transformed into protective fury, nothing can stand against it. Not technology, not numbers, not even the vastness of space itself. The children were home. The galaxy was forever changed, and humanity stood watch over its young, knowing that they had proven something essential about their species. They were not the strongest. They were not the smartest, but they were the most devoted to their children, and that made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy to provoke. The stars turned overhead. Life continued. And somewhere, a human parent looked up at the night sky and smiled, knowing that their children could sleep safely. Because the galaxy had learned its lesson, and it would never forget.